Welcome back. We are MDEV1004. That's Mobile APIs and Frameworks in the summer 2023 semester at Georgian College. And it's week 11, part 1 of our broadcast and recording. And this one, it's not unanticipated. This week we're going to be adding JWT to our full CRUD. Last week we kind of disabled it, and we need some, I'm just going to skip slide 4 here. We need some UI for authentication. We need a login screen. We need a registration screen. We need these screens. And we also need to include JWT authentication. So, and let's talk about this a little bit. Why, again, just before we get into the how we're going to do it, right, if you think about it. So we enabled JWT, we disabled it. And JWT member works as a token. We send a token over to the API. We log into the API. The API gives us a token. We take that token, whatever it is, and store it somehow. That's the exercise. If I was running a website, and if I was running something like Angular or React on the front end, and I was running the API on the back end, I would use something like local storage or session storage on the website to store my web token. That's what I would do. Okay, so this web token would be stored somewhere, and then every single time I accessed the secure portion of the site, I would use that same web token I would send that web token across to the API saying, hi, here's my web token, it's me, and I'm going to access this, this particular URI, this operation I'm going to do, okay, whatever it's going to be. When I log out, if I was running a website, I would just remove or delete the web token. That's what I would do from local storage or session storage. And then this way, the web token would be gone. Now, I would normally give the web token a certain amount of time that it would expire, probably something like an hour or something like that. Okay, but even if it was a lot longer, doesn't matter. Once you log out and that web token is gone, you can't get it back. Okay, you can't. Once you log in again, you get a new web token. Why is this good? That means that every user for every website has their own identifier. Think about this web token, which is like, 256 characters or whatever the hell, whatever it's going to be. And it's like, hey, this is me, right? You log in, this is me. I'm doing a full CRUD operation, this is me, right? I log out, I get rid of the token. That's what's happening. So that's how it works. And that's what we need to kind of do on the iOS side. Now, the Android side is a little trickier for this one, okay? I got to be honest, just a little bit, just a tiny bit, all right? But it's still very doable. And there are some design choices I made to keep it easier for the Android side. Example, I did not use a navigation controller, okay? Navigation controller on the iOS side is slightly different than something like a navigation controller on the Android side, so I elected just to use segues. Not because segues are the best things to use at all, especially for this scenario, but rather that it's just easier to get it done, okay? There are going to be some things I'm not happy about with the segue, and I'll talk about them, right? Especially when we have this many screens. Once we get into more than 2 or 3 screens, segues become not the right choice. If I have 2 screens, if I'm going to go from A to B, segue is perfect. You don't need a navigation controller, you need nothing. But if I'm going from A to B, back to C, over to over to D, and so on, you need some kind of navigation scheme. I'm not going to do that here today. Okay, so, and we'll talk about how this works. So the goals again for ICE 9 is we're going to add authentication views, right? Add view controllers for login and register. Add code to send our JWT to the API. Refactor our code a little bit. Talk about some more refactoring options, right? Like we can think about, and it's easy to think about what they look like. Add JWT security back into our API, right? Like these are all things we're going to do today. And then for you to do is build a similar UI for Android, okay? I would continue to run, for those people who are doing it right, continue to run with the Android application you've been building since ICE 7, right? That's what it is. Just keep going. So take ICE 7, make a copy, keep going with that, and then you should just be fine, okay? For some people I've noticed, I haven't marked or released the marks for ICE 7 yet, but I've noticed some people are not able to do the Android side. Okay, they can't do it. And some of you have sent me direct messages and emails saying, I don't know how to do it. it's too difficult, you know, and all that kind of stuff, right? And to me, when I think about this, I'm always thinking that it is actually not that difficult, you know, to get it done. You just have to focus on getting an Android application running. You can put a lot of stuff in ChatGPT to get going, and if we have later on, if we have some time, I don't believe I'm saying this, I'll show you how to do it a little bit, okay? Maybe I'll pull up Android Studio and we'll see how it goes, and you know, we'll fuddle around with ChatGPT a little bit and see if I can put together an Android application within a reasonable time frame. Okay, let's see how it goes. However, let's move on here to what we're doing today. As always, up online, I've got a series of gists, right? And there's a reason for this. We could make a copy of our application from last day, but there's been so many changes from last day to this day that it almost behooves us to start a brand new app, okay? And the reason for this is because I've added a login view controller, a register view controller, I've modified the edit API CRUD view controller, the CRUD view controller itself. The main storyboard's changed. The only thing that's not changed is the movie.swift, you know, kind of struct, as well as the movie table view cell, you know, which is the custom table view cell that we're using. So those are the two things that haven't changed, but everything else has changed. So yes, I could use the last week, but everything has changed, so I figured might as well make a brand new app at this point, okay? And it's good practice anyway, because we're gonna kind of see how this morphs. So on to our little Mac Studio. I'm gonna run with the stuff on the Mac from here on in, hopefully. And again, just to help, on the Mac, I'm gonna log into our Blackboard here. And I'm just going to get our gists, just like I just showed you on the PC. I'm just going to get them here from our weekly content area. Realistically, I could have put all these in a separate link, like, you know, a subfolder or whatever. I'm not going to do that, so you have it all on one page. All right, so these are the things I need, but I need an app, so I'm going to go to Xcode here. Here's my Xcode, and I'm going to create a new Xcode project in this case because there's so many changes. So I'm going to click Next, and I'm going to call this MDEV1004, summer 2023, and then it's ICE 9, if I'm not wrong. Is it ICE 9? Yes. Yeah. ICE 9, and again, I'm using Storyboard and Swift. I'm not using anything else. Click Next, and then I have to make sure that it's going to go in the right folder structure, which is going to be here, ICE 9. Okay, and this is the first part, ICE 9B, which will be our changes that we're going to make to our API. We'll do after. Okay, so I'm going to click Create, and here we go. So all we start off with is this. Now, again, what I recommend, right? What I recommend is close down Xcode. Okay, close down Xcode when you do this kind of stuff. And let's launch Visual Studio Code. And even when it comes to making a brand new project like this, and the reason for this is because we have a structure that we can use here. And I'm just going to go to my desktop and grab our ICEs. Here it is, and you can see there's ICE 9. I'm going to drag it in here into VS Code. I don't have to make any more major changes. However, what we do need to do is that one big change, which is to our base proj. That's where it is, base proj into main storyboard. And what I want to do is, again, you can replace the file if you want to at this point. A couple things to note about it. When you look at the structure of the XML here, because that's what this is, view controller is what it says. That's the name of the view controller by default. And you can see that view controller is the custom class. It actually shows it right here. So again, this is kind of delving into what it looks like on the back end and so on. The thing that you have to be careful about, because people have mentioned this before, when you do any kind of copy pasting or whatever, is if it says something in here, for example, when you're looking at another project, it might point to another project that this is looking at, and they're like, I don't know why, but this is pointing at the wrong project. Well, yeah, if it's pointing at ICE 6, you know, as an example, it's actually going to open up a file in another project altogether if you're not careful when you do this copy pasting. So please watch what it says in here. That's kind of an important thing. So here I'm going to go into our gists. I'm just going to grab that first one, which is my main storyboard. This is where I'm starting today. So main storyboard. And I'm going to copy the link address and go in here and do that. So I'm going to just do Command V. And here it is. There's the link address for the main storyboard. And I'm going to show you what this looks like. So Command A, Command C, going back to Visual Studio Code, Command A, Command V, which basically copies everything. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. So again, some of you are like, I don't know why, Tom, but my storyboard is pointing at something else. Yeah, it will. If it says something like ice, like another thing in here, if it's pointing to somewhere else. And you got to watch what it says. Here's an example. Custom module. Look at this custom module, or the scene module. It says the custom module is ICE 9. So if this said something else, like ICE 6, right? That means it's going to look at another folder altogether. And you're like, anything I do to my project doesn't point to the right thing. It messes up. Why? Because this is pointing to the wrong thing. So be careful here when you copy this in. So that's first thing. So save. Should say ICE 9. Okay, and I kind of made it so we did that. Next, a couple of strategies here, okay? I could create the files and copy paste. That's one thing I could do, right? And if I do that, then when we come back to Xcode, we have to add the files back into Xcode. So people had problems with this as well. When they said, I don't know how you added the files. Should we do them in Xcode? Should we do this? You showed it VS Code. Should I do it there? Doesn't really matter, is the answer. I can go into Xcode and add them in. I find that if you have a complete project before you go to Xcode, it's better. That's what I find, because then Xcode tries to do its business, right? So again, what I could do is I can make a new file here, and as long as the file is called the same thing as my gists, so example, if I was going to go back out to, and I'm just going to go here to my gists, right, which is me, then you can see that the next thing I'm probably going to do is put in the support structures for this stuff. Like I got main storyboard, and I recommend going with our movie.swift and my movie table view cell so there's no errors. So that's what the next thing I want to do. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to go to that link, so I'm going to open up that link, copy link address, go here. I know it's slow, but it's okay because, it's not so bad. It's, you guys can get this done. Don't worry. So I'm just recreating it. And just in case you need to do this, I'm showing you this also, just in case you need to do this for your final test in this course, which is around the corner at this point. It's not so far away from where we were before. So again, back to VS Code. As an example, I know that it's going to be a movie, dot Swift. So let's add that in. So movie.swift, and then just copy paste. Okay. And the other one that I know that we're going to do, if I go back out, is this movie content view, movie table view cell. I'm going to start with that one. So copy link address. I'm just going to leave them up here for now. So we can go back. And again, just going to go into raw mode, grab those things, copy it, go back out here, and just watch the name movie table view cell. Some people are like, I don't know why, but my thing doesn't connect. Make sure the names are right. So movie table view cell .swift. Paste. Okay, so we've got those things in there. Normally, like I said, I kind of format it the way I want it, save. So that's the next one. So now that that's my support. Those are my two support files, okay, that I have to add in. And by the way, I have to add all this in on the Xcode side when we start off, as you're going to see in a second. Next, once we have of those two things in there, now we can add in the next stuff. So I'm going to say new file. And here's the good thing about doing it with VS Code. I don't have to swim through the Apple menus. I don't have to go new file, Swift, blah, blah, blah. Like it's an extra click to do all the extra stuff with on the Apple side. I don't have to do that here. It's just much easier, and I find it's just way easier to go. So I know one of them is going to become our API CRUD view controller. So I'm going to say API CRUD view controller.swift. By the way, you can do this any way you want. If you want to take an existing project, copy it, and do all the other stuff to it and copy paste into it, it's totally up to you. As long as it meets requirements at the end, I'm okay. Like, it's not going to kill me for you guys to do it a different way, right? Which is kind of what I've been saying in the past. It's really up to you. You guys are the developers. And for me, I'm just kind of guiding you as much as I can to tell you, hey, this is probably what I would do, okay? Safe. We'll go through the code after this, like normal. Okay, let's do the next one. So, it's called add edit API CRUD view controller.swift. Back to this. By the way, the reason why I know this is because it may not look like it, but I actually spent hours of doing this, prepping for this thing. And I kind of said this before at times, you know, you can't see the work that's been done on this stuff, you know, ahead of time. It looks like everything is easy and it's just code that I'm giving you, but actually I made all this code, right? I went through it, developed it, tested it, made sure it worked, then come over and say, here it is, right? So it looks like it's easy, but you know, there's some clearly there's some work to be done. All right, now we have a login view controller and a register controller, and they're called slightly different things than I've called them before, which is a API login view controller. Okay, API login view controller. Let's go back to this. And again, we'll talk about all of it. Don't worry. I'm not going to just like give you code to copy paste in and not talk about it. And again, there's different approaches to this. And I'll talk about my problems. I got some problems I got to talk about as well. Right? That things that didn't quite work the way I wanted it to, but they're okay as a starting point. Right? So, which is kind of what I always look at. Okay, so new file. And we'll call this API register view controller dot swift. And again, if you're faster than me, awesome. It's better. You guys are young minds. You guys should be able to be faster than this old guy in front of you right here. All right. All right, so all my code is in now. I've kind of got all my code ready to go. I've built my project, but when I launch Xcode, just like you know, my Xcode will be not have any of these files in it other than my storyboard, because Xcode has to register all these files, you know, in it. So now I'm going to launch Xcode again. I'm going to keep Visual Studio Code open for now, and I'm going to go back and launch ICE9. And as you're going to notice, as I said, don't run the project at this point, okay? This is just me getting things ready. Couple things. The manifest of the project, which is the first file that comes up. You don't need Mac, so we can remove that as a target, supported destination. And we don't need iPad for now, so we can get that gone as well, okay? In terms of orientation, deployment info. So iPhone orientation, I really don't need landscape left or landscape right. I'm going to uncheck those, which you probably should do if you're making an application like this, and only leave portrait. In our case, portrait is the only orientation that our app would support. It makes sense, because why would I need something that's going to be sideways or something, okay? Now, I don't see any of the other you know, files. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to our folder, right click, and then instead of using new file, I'm going to click on add files to the project. Add files to the project. When I do that, you're going to see that I can go into ICE9 and select all the files that I want. So this one, right? I can kind of shift click all the ones that say API, all these ones, right? And the first thing I want to add is all those. So I add them in. There we go. And I also want to add in the other two that I didn't grab. So just add files to the project. And I'm just going to add in the movie.swift as well as the movie table view cell. And add them in. And now I have all my files in the project here in Xcode. Okay. The first thing we should do is take a look at the the main storyboard, and make sure that everything is linked together. So now our main storyboard looks like this. We have actually 4 view controllers that you should see here in our main storyboard. Okay, so we have a login view controller. The login connects to a register view controller with a segue. And this is where I was saying about segues. Too many segues here. And there's a segue that goes from our login view controller to our favorite movies, which is our API cred view controller. And then over here we have our edit movie. You can see edit movie here, which is our add edit API cred view controller. Long names, but I had to come up with new names because when I make different gists, they have to have different names. Otherwise, I'd update the old one, and that would be bad. Okay, so those are the ones that we have. Those are the new controllers. You can see that all the user interfaces have been given to you. Nice, nice, nice. And also all of the view controllers in the outliner, notice here they all have the proper names here now. So all these have proper names. It bugged me that one of them didn't last week, and I fixed that. Okay, so, and a couple of things to think about when it comes to inspecting your outliner. Okay, on the right-hand side, you can see that there are different inspectors you can use. So one of the things you can use here is title. API register view controller as an example on the title property. You can change that so it appears different here on the outliner. Okay, and so you can change the title. Also, if you kind of skip over to this, you can see that. So this, when I say this, I mean the identity inspector. If I click on any of the view controllers here in the outliner, on the right in the identity inspector, you can see that the storyboard ID is something you can mention here as well. And I've done that for each one of them. And this is going to help us with a new feature that I've added in to unroll, or in this case, unwind the segues. I have to mention which view is I'm going to go back to, which is the login view controller. So API login view controller, you can see that it also has a storyboard ID here in the identity inspector. Okay, so that's all of those. Robert, you good? Okay, no problem. So all I did was copy it and add them in. And the great thing about doing this with our storyboard IDs, the way we did them, the way we kind of made the storyboard, is less work for you. A couple things we need to do because it's a brand new project. At the top, our target iPhone is not the iPhone 14 Pro, it's the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So please make sure you have clicked that on, okay? And this is definitely iPhone 14 Pro Max down here. So the target simulator and the target size class down here are matched. That's important to do, all right? Other things that we can do, we can definitely separate this into different parts here. We have a lot of view controllers, and now we might want to think about how to organize this. We're not going to do that yet, but this is the first part. The next part is actually running the project, right? So I would kind of build the project out to make sure that it builds and there's no issues. Sometimes when I do this kind of stuff, there are issues running the project. We also see quite a few warnings and that I'm ignoring right now. Let's try going to some of these places. So register here, I should be able to go to the register page and click cancel to go back. Okay, so all those things should be functioning at this point. I'm not going to log in yet, okay, but I just wanted to make sure that the project is running. Let's stop. And then let's get into the nuts and bolts by going back to Visual Studio Code here. Now that this has been changed, I want to take a look at a couple things. So our info.plist, okay, is basically our property list, for our project. That's what this thing is, okay? In the base project itself, there was 2 files we saw, right? One of them was a main storyboard. The other one is a launch storyboard where you can do a splash screen. That's normally what we can do here. So where is our all the information for our project in this thing? Well, there is this project PBX proj file, this one. And what this does is it actually lists all the controllers inside here. Notice it says app delegate, scene delegate, view controller.swift and sources, and then it has add edit API controller, the add API control, the CRUD view controller, and so on. Notice I have that extra view controller.swift here right now, okay? Because I did not delete the one that came with the base project. Let's get rid of it. So going back to Xcode, I want to show you the difference here. We can watch the change happen, all right? So you understand how this is put together. Back in Xcode, if I go over to my navigation, kind of view, and on the left, I have this extra view controller that I don't need. Let's get rid of it. Delete. It's unnecessary for me to use it right now. So I'm going to remove, kind of move to trash is what I want to do, and remove references, right? So that's what I've done. Now that that extra view controller is gone, it's just a file that's gone, right? Let's take a look what happened here in Visual Studio Code, right? So here's Visual Studio Code. Do we still have our view controller? And you can see that it's been deleted. That's what's happened here as we're looking at it. So really, the project PBX proj file that's inside of this Xcode project area, normally you can't see this like this. This is, when you're looking at Xcode, it looks like one file, but actually it's a folder, okay? And if you look through here, it's kind of a list, a manifest of everything that's been added in. Each one of those files is listed here, and that's why we have to add it manually back into the project, because although I can use Visual Studio Code to add everything in here, unless I put it through Xcode, it won't list the project files properly here, and that's what this does. Okay, it's a manifest of all the project files. Okay, this is everything here. And it also gives it, each one of these things, it creates IDs for them all. Okay, and also it points them to the project itself. So these are the children, and you can see each one of these children have a unique identifier. Okay, and that points to, that's how it kind of knits together all the files in the project. That's what it does. Okay, so why am I showing you this? Because you really don't care about this stuff. This is how your project gets broken, my friends, right? When you do copy pasting operations, okay? All right, so now that we have everything working, we don't really need to look at this anymore. I'm just showing you how things are done. I do want to put this up on GitHub, so I'm gonna say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added project files for ICE9, and then git push. And that pushes all our changes right now to GitHub, okay? And so now if you looked at my GitHub repository, you literally could look at ICE9 and it would have everything inside there we just did, okay? Let's take a look at the code now, all right? Are you good, Robert?
Yeah, okay, so you have, just to verify, we added the API CRUD view controller.
Yeah.
We used to have the CRUD view controller.
That's why
We're removing it out.
well, there's so many, that's why I made a whole new project.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're saying we have to edit the project file and remove it right out of that, what do you call it, project?
I didn't do it. I did it through Xcode. But basically what it is, like, when I made a brand new project, it comes with a base view controller. That's what it comes with. And that view controller is just a template, right? So what I've done is, when I make a new project, I've added all my custom view controllers in there, but I still have this extra thing in there, so I just go on Xcode and remove it, and I'm showing you where it gets removed. You don't have nothing to do in Visual Studio Code here. I'm just showing you what happens, right? But what you need to do is somehow, you can do it through Xcode, you can do it through Visual Studio Code, but you must add all these files in. That's what we've done, okay? And once you've got that going, then verify in Xcode. Does it look proper? Can you see the 4 view controllers in your storyboard?
Yes.
Yeah, that's important. And do you have all the files in place? And if you do, make sure that your target is the iPhone 14 Pro Max up here, right? Because if you don't do that, it's going to be looking bad. And then test it, build it, and then if it builds, you're good to go, right? So those are the project. That's my strategy is to cut down on some of this copy pasting problems that we would have by saving our view controllers. Okay, so now that we have this, again, there's a lot of pieces here we can use to make this whole thing better. One, I really don't have any kind of really cool icon for logging out. Okay, I could use an X, right? And I've used this like little back arrow right now, and all that kind of stuff. But let's take a look at the code. Don't worry about the user interface is basic. Again, look, it's a login with a username and password. Okay, that's number one. And then if you don't have an account, register here, it takes you to a segue that goes to the register page. Okay, the register page, what it allows you to do is get all the pertinent information for first name, last name, email address, username, password, and confirm password. One change that we made to the user interface is that the movie app login, okay, as an example, that's the entry point for the entire application. You cannot look at the list anymore. You can't even get to the app without logging in. Okay, that's how it's going to be. So notice that that is the entry point. And that is a big change compared to going directly to the CRUD view controller as an example, right? We don't go to the CRUD view controller now, we go into the login screen. That means when you come to this app, if you're using this app, you have to log in. Otherwise, you couldn't see anything. This is not an app that would be open anymore because this is an app that gives you your favorite movies and then you can modify them. Now, why did I make it this way? I'm making it so that if you have an app that protects information, then, as an example, then you can have a screen that is basically our entry point or a lobby, if you will. And that's what our login is, kind of like a lobby that you have to log in before you get somewhere else. Alternatively, here's what we could have done differently, right? You could have given the movie list itself the ability for you to see the movie list without logging in, right? That's something we could have done. And then if we did that, our organizational structure for our storyboard would be different, right? We would have the entry point would be our favorite movie list. We could see the movie list. As long as it wasn't blocked, then that would be no problem. That's another way we could have done it, right? And then if I attempted to do anything else, like log in to make changes, I'd have to have some other kind of button, like a login button, somewhere on the CRUD view controller. That means instead of having a login screen first, I would have to make another button in here to log in somewhere, right? Maybe something like I would use a tab, kind of a tab navigation where they would have a little login button at the bottom or something else like that, which is also fine. I think though, the reason why I chose to do this is twofold. One, I wanted to make your user interface simple and the flow simple, right? And two, I also wanted to show you how I can protect other pages. You can't even go there unless you log in. And if you don't log in, you won't go to the next page. So that kind of prevents the other pages from being shown at all, okay? There are some issues, however, and we'll talk about them. Let's go first into the login controller and see how that's been done. So I'm just going to go into our API login view controller. Here it is. And now I'm going to start talking about the code. So I want you to understand it. One, we're making connections to our username and password. That's simple. We've done that before. We make a reference to our API login view controller here, and we kind of give it shared as a name for the reference. This is another way of doing it. We could have also called it the API login view controller here again, lowercase, which we've done in the past. All I'm doing is I'm creating an area where I can have a reference to this controller from other places. That's all it is. Alternatively, what we could have done is we could have made it differently where we had some kind of authentication manager which was in its own file to do a lot of these little operations. A centralized location, like I mentioned before, which is our singleton idea. Okay, next. I have the viewDidLoad function, and basically the only thing the viewDidLoad function does here is it makes a reference to itself, to the app itself. It saves a reference of this view controller in the shared variable so that I can use it later on. It's a static variable, which means it's always going to be the same when this thing gets instantiated. Next, the function that's clear login text fields. Listen, sometimes if I go register or if I put the wrong login information, I want to clear the text fields again. And this is what this function does. Clears the text fields, and when it says becomes first responder, the intent here is that the user text field will actually be in focus. That's where your entry is going to be, okay? Next, the login button pressed is where the funny work goes in, okay? So basically what I do here is I say, okay, username is the username I get from the text field, Password is the password I get from the text fields. The password in the text field is protected, so you see those little dots, so you can't see what the password is doing. Look, in good design, what we could have done is made that little eye appear. So if you click on the eye, you can see the, what you typed into the password. I didn't do that here. Okay, again, keeping it simple. Then we create the URL string. This URL string is really the URL for our MDEV1004 up on render.com. It's the exact same thing we've done before, the API login. And once we have our URL, we start putting together our parameters. These parameters are equivalent to request.body.params. That's what this is. Request.body.params, or request.body is what we're doing, right? And what we're doing is we're taking those parameters and we're passing them to the into the request body itself. So here, if you notice, we have our request. We're forming up our request. We instantiate an object of URL request type on line 40 here. That's what we're doing. Remember that Swift does not use the new keyword, but this is what's happening here. You're using the initializer, right, which is our constructor function in Swift, to instantiate an object of type URL request and save a reference to it in the request variable. That's what's happening. The request variable, then we configure it. We have our HTTP method as post, and then now this is the thing that we start off. We set our value to application JSON. That's the data that we're going to get back, right? We do a do catch, and in the do catch, this is our attempt to do a little bit of exception handling, where we're basically saying that the HTTP body, we're kind of putting that together. So that's the request.body now. We're setting it to, JSON serializing. We're serializing our response as JSON data, right? And our JSON object that we're sending is the parameters that we mentioned earlier, the username and password. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the username and password from our form, converting it into a request body compatible something, and passing it to our API so that the API has a request.body.username, a request.body.password. It has those two things, right? Because it needs those in the API, right? Once we've done that, on line 51, we're actually going to create our fetching task. That's what our connection task, which is our data task. The data task connects with the request, right? And then now we have our completion closure equivalent, okay? So then, as we go down, we want to skip down to there's some error checking, and then we get down to the do catch again. The do catch basically is now the response. So we take the first part, the first do catch up here is the request. So if I was going to comment this would be the request. I'm forming up, or I'm configuring up here. Actually, it starts earlier. Let's just kind of start up here. I'm configuring the request at this point right here. On line, let's say around line 38, I'm configuring the request. So I'm going to put that in there. Configure the request. Okay, that's what this is. So I configure the request up here. Once I configure the request, I make the request right here. So this is where I issue the request, down here. Issue the request. Okay, so I issue the request to the API, right? Once I issue the request to the API has a response, and this is where the response comes back in. Okay, so the response, because this is the API response. Oh my God. Ronan, how you doing, man? I haven't seen you all semester. All right. It's good. It's good. So here's the API response. The API response comes back, and it comes back with a data object. This data object needs to be parsed because, remember, we have that funky parsing. We have a message object, which the message object is going to be, am I successful or not? I'm also going to have a token object that comes back. What is my token? I need that token. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that token object and I'm going to store it using user defaults. So user defaults is local storage that we're going to store here in my app. And I'm going to store my user defaults. The token itself is going to be stored in user defaults. User defaults for us is like local storage on the web or user prefs on Android. Same thing, right? And so remember, it's key value pairs. Key value pairs, where the key for this thing is auth token and the value is the token that we're storing. Pretty simple, okay? Key value pairs, a dictionary is what it is, right? And then once I've done that, on the main thread, I perform my segue. This is after I've logged in. I perform my segue, and the segue is called login segue. The login segue connects my login view controller to my API CRUD view controller. That's all it does. It moves us to the next screen. Okay. Error, error, error. If somehow there's an error, it won't work. Yeah. And then the other parts that I need to put in is the register button pressed. The register button pressed is that little register button that says, hey, do you want to register if you don't have a thing? And if I do, I go to the register segue. There's also this other thing called unwind to login view controller. That's new. Notice there's not much in there in the unwind to login view controller because I'm going to use an unwind segue. The unwind segue is necessary because I have so many segues. I'm going to make a segue from login to CRUD, from CRUD to add edit. How do I unwind that all the way back? Because basically what I'm doing is I'm making layers, I'm instantiating layers of screens, and then I need to unpack those screens. That's what I'm saying. This is not the best way to do the navigation. When I have so many segues, weird stuff happens. I'm going to show you what happens, okay? But we got to talk about it. API register view controller. Let's get to that one. So what if I wanted to register? If I wanted to register, I have all my text fields, first name, last name, blah, blah, whatever. And then I have my register button pressed. So here, instead of constructing a user model, instead of constructing the user model here, I'm not using that. I could. But instead, what I'm doing is I'm just getting the data from our text fields. And once I've got them, then I kind of put together the parameter list, because really that's what the parameters are. I could make an object, I could, but remember, that's not how it works. The object is actually, the heavy lifting is happening on the API side, right? All we're doing is passing the parameters and creating our request.body. That's what we're doing here. So again, think about what we're doing here. So here we're creating our request. We're configuring our request again. So this is, configure request. Right, but again, I want to go through it just so you can see the flow. It's not that difficult, right? Here's where I configure my request. Once I configure my request, right, then I'm putting together the request body with the parameters that we made here. The parameters here are just an array of strings, right? That's all they are. Actually, they're an array of key value pairs is what they are, right? And or properties. Once I've got that, once I've got those parameters, right, then I send them off. I make the request. This is where I issue the request. So issue the request, just like last time. Issue the request, right? Once I've got the request done, now I'm waiting for actually, sorry, that's still configuration. The request issue is down here, just to make sure I'm accurate when I'm talking to you guys, so that way you're not completely lost, right? Okay, so here's our issue. So the request, when I go data task, I take the request that I built and I issue the request, right? And when I do that, I get a response. The response come back, maybe I was right the first time.
No, your configuration was above the request.
I think this is the request here. This is the request, because I do a JSON, no, I think this is it. The data task is the request. There it is. And I get a response. The response object comes back, and basically what I do is I need to parse the response. So this is the response. So this is the response, right? And then the response comes back, and I get, again, I take the data object itself. The data object I have to parse. Here's my data object. And the data object I'm parsing, saving it here in this thing called JSON. I could realistically have renamed this to response, okay? It's up to you how you want to do it, but that's what this is. And then the JSON object itself, we're going to use the success property to make sure that, do I have success? Do I register properly? And if I've registered the user properly, everything is good. Then I'm going to clear the text fields from the API login view controller and dismiss. Head back to the login view controller. I'm not going to log the user in automatically. I'm going to make them log in properly. That's what I'm doing here, okay? I could have logged them in though, if I really wanted to. Okay, and that's the register view controller. Again, there's not a lot of code here. Do you know what I'm saying? It's really just, registering, using the API to register, okay? So this is what this is. Next, let's take a look at the changes to the API CRUD view controller, right? So the one that was called CRUD view controller before. Again, not a whole pile of changes, but let's go through them. So here's my fetch movies. This is all the exact same. Nothing changed there. Display error message, nothing changed there. Here's where the changes come in. Hey, look, fetch movies, we have this new guard let. And guard let is the auth token. Auth token uses user defaults to do what? It's going to basically use the string, kind of access the object that is stored in user defaults called auth token, which we did when we logged in, right? So login stores the auth token. Here we load the auth token and store it here in a variable called auth token. That's all it is. Now that I have that token, I need to configure a request to use it. And it happens right here. So this part, right, retrieves the auth token, retrieve auth token from user defaults. That's what this does, okay? And this part down here is now I'm starting to configure my, my request. So right here, configure request, right? And what happens down here is this is where the funky request start happens. We need to use something called bearer. So what I'm doing with the request is when I form up the request, the bearer itself is almost like a security header that I set over. It's an HTTP header that I'm putting together, and that's what the bearer is. And look what I'm doing. I'm interpolating the auth token that I got from user defaults, and I'm storing it inside of this string, and that is going to be my authorization header that I'm sending over. So I'm using bearer token is what I'm doing, a bearer token request, okay? And once I've done, we did this, by the way, in Postman, right? It's exactly the same thing. All we're doing is using iOS to do the Postman job, okay? And then once we've got this, we make the request. So we issue the request. And so this is the issuing the request part. Issue request, right? And we get a response. So the response object happens around right here. This is the response, right? So here is the response. And so what happens is the response comes back, it decodes the JSON data just like normal, and everything else is identical. There's nothing different that happened from last time. Nothing different. It's all up here. This is the stuff that's changed, right? Okay, so that's that part. And that is my edit. We also have, sorry, that is my fetch. There's also the exact same code, for the most part, in my deletion. So if I do my add edit button, basically just goes to the segue, it segues over to the other screen. But when I do the delete movie function, here's my delete movie function, it's the exact same way. Look, here's the auth token. I configure the request with a bearer token, and the deletion is identical. So that's the only thing is every single time we do a CRUD operation, I need to issue that auth token. Okay. Refactoring. What if, when I come to this controller, I automatically grab that auth token? Instead of me having to grab it every single time, I just have it in memory. That's a way of viewing it as well, right? So one place, I only go to user defaults one time. You might think about that. It cuts down a little bit of our code, just a tiny bit, but not much to think about it, right? It's like a few lines of code here. So the savings isn't grand, okay? But I'm putting it out there. Could be something we do, okay? We could also use a singleton here. Maybe we call this the auth manager or authentication manager singleton, which is kind of a centralized file in a global space that has all of these kind of things where I can set the token, retrieve the token, right? And do all the, all the things that I require, almost like a service that I might require for authentication. By the way, Android might be set up a little different than this because of that. When we put this into ChatGPT later on, you'll see it might give us some recommendations on how to set Android up. Okay. Next, so that's the API CRUD view controller. The API edit CRUD view controller is the exact same thing. Okay, exactly the same. Nothing has changed here. Nothing has changed except for this part. Here we go. So this is where this is the retrieve part, right? Here's my retrieve auth token, right? And if you go down, okay, blah, blah, blah. We're starting to configure the auth token down here. We're configuring a request. Configure request. This is when this is happening. And then as we come through, we're still configuring. We're putting together our movie data, and now we issue the request. Way down here, here's our request. So the configuration is a little bit more, but here's the request. Yep. Okay, and once we do the request, we send off the movie we want to add or edit, right? And then we get a response. Here's the response. Right, did it work? That's it. It's really that simple. All we're doing is we're incorporating the auth token. We're storing it in user defaults and retrieving it every single time. Very simple. The other part we have to think about is us logging out. When we log out, it happens in our it happens in our API CRUD view controller. Let's go back one step. So this API CRUD view controller thing. When we log out, there's some special things that go on. Okay, one, the user default standard, we're going to remove object. So now we're deleting the auth token from user defaults. That is on us to do as developers. Remember that the auth token is going to last as long as we make it last on the API side. That has nothing to do with you as a developer. That's the API. How long they give you permission, the timing, when it times out, right? Then we need to clear our text fields because we're going to go back to the login screen again. And here is where we're going to do the unwind. And the unwind is just a perform segue, all right? It's not a dismiss. Because if we dismiss, what are we dismissing? Are we dismissing the add edit view controller? What are we dismissing? That's kind of weird, right? This is where segues aren't going to look fine. And you're going to see this. Here's the effect you're going to see here, which I'm not happy with. Okay, I'll be honest, right? For a moment, you're going to see the add edit view controller pop up, and then it's going to disappear, and then you're going to go to login view controller. That's what's going to happen because it's unwinding all that stuff, right? I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. I want to have a clean transition from one thing to the other. So I would probably, in a real world developer scenario, I'd probably use a navigation controller. Something where I would embed all these little view controllers in a navigation controller, and I would go back. I'm just keeping it simple like this because Android. That's the only reason, okay? Just to make it easier for us to do it. So that is pretty much all the code that's changed. Everything else is identical. Now, so let's try it out and see if it happens. Let's add a movie and all that stuff. By the way, people destroyed the movies again, right? We're going to fix that in a second, okay? They went a little crazy with that stuff. So let's run the app and show this whole process. First of all, let's fail. Whenever we try to do something, we should probably fail. So if I do something like admin, and if I click login with no password, right, it shouldn't do anything. It shouldn't take me anywhere. That's the important thing. If it doesn't do it, right now we should have, which I didn't include yet, by the way, we can do that easily, some kind of pop-up that basically says you need to add in both username and password, because I didn't even use the password. I didn't even complete this thing, okay? So again, a couple things we can do here. Let's see if I was smart enough to put a message here in the print statement. I don't even think it went there yet. Look, because it didn't complete everything, right? It kind of failed out, and which means that in my login view controller, this part right here, what I need to do is, because I'm formulating the login press, it says, hey, guardlet. This guardlet says, oh, there it is. Look, login failed, error, user not logged in. Finally went back. It finally got back to me. You know why it took so long? Render. Render took too long to respond, and that's what happened. So if we actually look here to the simulator, nothing's going on here, but we finally got this error that says, hey, the user's not logged in. And so we should have the same kind of structure here. I'm not going to make you do it because this is just an example app. The same kind of structure that basically brings up a request or a pop-up that says, hey, you didn't log in, incorrect login, username and password incorrect, something like that, okay? So it failed. Clearly it works, number one. Next, and this is what I was hoping we were going to see. Next, let's make it fail, or let's make it succeed. So here I'm going to just put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the password. I'm going to click login, and let's see what happens now. It succeeded, right? So now we proved out that security works. You can see clearly that people have destroyed everything here. Let's just delete the entire list and see if it fails. Okay, so I'm going to just delete this one, right? This is the kind of pop-up I'm talking about. And let's delete this one. And let's put those movies back. Okay, so again, when it comes to putting the movies back, I'm just going to log out here, right? See how that little thing popped up for a second? I don't like that. I don't like that. And I'm just going to come back here and error out here for a second. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code. Remember how we put everything back. We actually have it here in our API. So instead of using this, now's the time where we're going to make that copy and create our ICE9B. Right? This is ICE9. ICE9B is the API side. Let's make some changes. Right?
If you're a general user,
yeah.
I can hit the login, it's just going to close the app. It kind of skips that whole.
Right?
But it forces you to log in when you go in anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Once you get a new auth.
Yeah. You have no choice.
What's the point of even adding the log out button? I know that it's cleaner and it removes stuff, but
all I'm showing you is the process. So you don't have to do all these steps, right? Like example, like you said, once you leave the app, you can just erase the token. The token is the most important part. The logout button actually just removes the token from user preferences. You know, that's all it does, right? And user defaults. Once it does that, then you're clear. Then you have to get another token, right? But like you said, even if you're logged in again, you get a new token. Right? Let's fix it. So the next part is how we're going to get the. But you know, for me, it's an extra layer of protection, right? Just in case there's some kind of weird hacker. Here's my 8B, right? Let's copy paste this 8B, and we'll make 9B come up whenever it feels like. There we go. And the reason why it took so long is because we're copying all the node modules. Right? Here's 9B. Okay. And I'm going to drag 9B in here now. So we're not modifying the Xcode project anymore. We're modifying our API. Okay. And by the way, we have to do the same thing to the API up online. Okay. So a couple things to note with our API. Okay. Let's do that. So control backtick. No. There it is. Control backtick. What I want to do here, so in terms of the only thing we're changing, and the only reason why I'm showing you this at all is because we're modifying a couple things. So our package.json, just going to go here, sorry. Oh. That's what happens when you're remote. Okay, there you go. Our package.json, I'm just going to update this to ICE9. That's all I'm doing. Version 9 of our code. Here's ICE9. So you know what that is. Save. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to regenerate. I'm also using this to regenerate our data. So here's how you regenerate data. First, let's add this ICE9 in. So git add dot, git commit -m, and we're going to say added project files for ICE9B. Git push. Okay, there we go. But what I want to do, just to show you, is the command. Remember the command? Mongo import. Mongo import. And that's how we're going to start. -d is equal to movies. -c is equal to movies. So that's the collection, right? -- type is equal to JSON. -- JSON array. We need to put that in there. And now we need the URL. All right. The URL would be if I go to server, and if I go to config for me, and if I go to this, which is my db.ts, we have my URL right here. This is the one I'm using. So I'm just going to copy that. Go down here, right click and paste. It's going to give me my URL. There it is. And now what I want to do is put the file we want to load in, which is ./movies.json. And that is my command. That's the Mongo import command, which you've guys seen before. Remember? Press enter. It's going to, if I did everything properly, and if I actually typed the Mongo import instead of Mong import, just go back to this, Mongo import, then it should just work. What did I do wrong? Mongo import. It says error parsing line, available options, cannot specify database and connection URI and command line option movie. And the URI is movie specified in the DB option. Okay, movies. Did I do something wrong? Movies, type JSON, JSON array, MongoDB, blah, 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 and then movies.json, is that right? Here's movies.json. You okay, buddy? Type is equal to JSON. I think I'm pretty right, actually. But command line parsing, minus DB option. What did I do wrong? Minus D is movies, that's minus DB, right? Minus C is collection, right? Minus type is JSON, minus JSON array. And then I did all this, movie. Let's put this in quotations, I don't think so. Huh?
After writing the Mongo input, minus D is for data visual.
Yep.
So we write the movies there, and in the link after slash we add movies. So that's also for data visual. So I like to remove one of them. I think
Movies. Yeah, sorry, it's this.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, done. I just copy pasted wrong. All right, so because that's what this is, movies. I didn't copy the whole thing. Okay. Hey. Now that that's done, we can check it. So if I go back to my Xcode application and run it and log in, let's do this properly. So admin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When we log in, it turns green, and it's going to take us back to this, and now we see all our movies. Yay! So I can do this, and I can still edit Back to the Future and blah, blah. And if I click cancel, it dismisses the segue. But if I log out, now the other way to do is, what if I pull this down? That's also a way of logging out, isn't it? But guess what? It didn't do this, right? So there's issues, is what I'm saying. These are issues, because I can always pull this down, right? And because I made it into a segue, segues allow you to flick down and then you're back to the screen again. Because this is the main screen, this is almost like our root view controller. That's what this is, in effect, right? We don't have a root view controller because we're not using navigation controllers, we're using segues. But this is kind of our root. This is the the view controller that basically all other view controllers spawn from, and so it unwinds to this. So again, if I log in again, right, using the same thing, right, then you can see it's just going to give me another token again, token number 2, right, that it gave me in store. It replaced the token in user defaults with a new token. That's all it's done, okay? And now, if I click this little logout button, it actually physically logs out anyway, okay? So either way, whether you swipe down, like you said, or whether I press this this little button, it does the job for me. So if I click this little button, see that? I hate that. That little add edit view controller comes up temporarily. Why? It's unwinding. And by the way, unless you use the app delegate, and there's some stuff you can do with app delegate to basically bypass that whole add edit view controller thing, right? I mean, like, it's almost like you're killing the thing in order for me to make the new thing. This is not a good way of doing it. However, it meets our needs. Okay? So that's the way that I'm just pointing it out there. So this is now we're done. Now this is the proving that we can get this done. And we know I can do CRUD because I've done CRUD before. I haven't done anything differently, right? However, if you want to prove it out, let's do some CRUD. And in the video, please, guys, show me your demonstrate full CRUD. Don't take shortcuts, okay? So let's change Back to the Future to Back to the Future 2. So somehow this is, the title is Back to the Future 2 this time, right? Not Back to the Future 1. And I'm also going to change the movie ID, our custom movie ID, to 40. I don't know, right? Just because I'm making a change. right? It's 1985. I think Back to the Future 2 came out later on. I'm not going to change that right now. Just going to just update this. And if everything goes well, now it's Back to the Future 2. Yay, it did the update. That means if I can do the update, I can do an add, I can do a delete, I can do everything. If I can do one thing, I can do them all. And, but let's take it out. Let's show it, right? So again, if you're showing it, I'm just going to make a dummy movie, right? So this is movie title and movie studio. Doesn't take long. Movie genre. This all is required. Movie director. Movie writer. Movie actor. Length is 200 minutes, really long. 2023. We'll keep the movie description there. We'll make it G, and we'll make it so the critics rating is 5. So it's red, and let's click add. And now we'll see it, and it'll appear way at the bottom. There's our movie title, right? Now what I can do is delete it. So now this is full cred, right? Where it says, do you want to? Yes, I do. Get rid of it. Bye-bye. And let's put an update. So we'll go back to Back to the Future 2 and put it back to what it was, which is Back to the Future. So this kind of gives you the full gamut of crud. And you want to show this stuff in your video, guys, right? Why? When it comes to your test, please don't skimp on this. Don't say, to save time, I've decided not to show you how this works. No, show me how it works. Show me that everything is working in your app, okay? Otherwise, I don't trust that it works. Simple as that, okay? So now this is good, but there's a problem with all this, isn't it? I'm not protecting the back end. Let's protect the back end to prove out that the JWT token works, right? So let's log out. We're good. And that we've done, we know that CRUD works. Yay, awesome. Back to the code, right? Back to the code. So here in my API, here's my API. I'm just going to do a couple things here. So I'm going to clear the screen. And I'm going to do a get status. And I'm doing a get status because there's some stuff that's changed. Take a look. It says get status, right? And it says that when I do a get status, it says all these files have been modified for ICE 9, right? Why is that? Because I'm in ICE 9B and I'm modifying my files here, but this is in ICE 9 and it's showing me that there's stuff that I haven't put up online. So a couple ways to do that is I could skip up. So I can do something like, let's skip up to ICEs, get add dot, get commit minus M. We'll say added comments. Now that little asterisk is gone, and then get push. So this pushes everything to our ICEs folder, right? Now we can skip back in there, and I can go MDEV ICE 9B to go into the specific folder itself. And so I can control that with Visual Studio Code. I prefer this over using Terminal by itself, over everything. I have access to Visual Studio Code. I can use Visual Studio Code and Xcode at the same time. I think I found a careful balance here where I have full control over my environment, right, this way, which is similar to Android. Then, once I'm there, I want to make a change. I want to say TSC minus W. So I want to kind of start the watch mode because now I'm making changes, okay? And the changes I want to make, because I'm testing the changes out, are in the roots. So that's where the only changes happen, right? And I've kind of added some pre-code for you that we're going to take a look at. So here it is. I want to protect our, remember these are the things I've protected. I'm even going to protect my list and my find now. So first, let's undo these. So passport authenticate. I'm undoing this part. So now I need passport authentication with JWT. I'm undoing this thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this link here, this little part, this little middleware that I'm putting in. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it everywhere. Here, here. It means you cannot do anything. You cannot even look at stuff without having to be logged in properly. Here, all this needs to be replaced. You're dying, Robert, today. You're dying. Was it a cold you had, or allergies, or what was it?
I'm not really sure exactly. It's not like I'm dying. It's just a little bit of a scratch in the back of the throat.
Okay.
kind of thing.
There you go. So I've done all that. So that's all I've done. So basically what I've done is I put middleware in between all of from the root to the controller. So here's the root list. Then there's the middleware that does the checking. And then there's the controller function down here. That's all it is. By the way, there is a way of making this cleaner. By removing all the functions and putting in an arrow function is also fine. All right, if you wanted to get rid of all these functions, where it says function, 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 you can just make it an arrow function. Next, and by the way, remember the rule. If the arrow function only does one thing, you literally can just point to the other controller. You can refactor this thing, okay, to make it even better. Make it shorter, is one, like a one-liner, right? And what I mean by that is, remember that what you can do is something like this. Does this compute for you? Where I can just say this, right? Where if I just did this part by itself, just like this, it works. I only have one line to do. I don't need curly braces because it only does one command, and the fat arrow function will actually do it. This, right? It's pretty sweet. So, in fact, here's the other thing. Do I ever need the curly braces here at all? Can I just go without curly braces at all, like this? Can I just not do this? And JavaScript will allow you to do it. Now, we can test it out locally, and let's do, that's what we're going to do first. So let's try one, just because we're refactoring our code. Like, that's one of the things we're doing today. And so we can make it so that it looks a little bit less, the router itself, right, can look like this, right? So notice that there is no function, there are no curly braces in here, and it still doesn't error out. Why? Because my fat arrow function is doing one job. So let's do that for all of them. Let's see if this works. So again, I'm just going to get rid of all the curly braces. A little bit of refactoring here. But all it's doing is just making it easier to read. That's all it's doing for us. Okay? And if there's an error, we'll know about it, right? Because look, that's what it looks like now. Okay? Does this make sense to you? Do you understand why I'm doing it this way? Because it's only doing one thing, and this is kind of our penultimate version of our routing table, if you will. Because now our routing table just does one thing, adds a movie. And it now becomes more descriptive, right? I want to post, I'm going to add a movie. I'm going to update the movie, right? Okay. I know I'm going slow here, but it'll give you a chance to catch up to my old typing ways. And I'm also trying to avoid copy-paste errors and all that stuff that you can get into if you try and do weird, kind of find replace. So are you guys clear on why I can do this? Okay. JavaScript. We have a few more to go. Again, all I'm trying to do this for is for clarity, so that our code becomes super good at the end. And here you have it. Now you can see a routing table in one page, like so. Make sense? Let's see if it works. Doing this and making it work are two different things. Does that make sense, Robert?
Yeah, it does. It just
Remember that this works the same way, by the way, in other languages too. Like in any kind of fat arrow function or delegate, if the delegate only has one command, you don't need to use curly braces. That's just like saying, using an if statement, and it only does one thing, you don't use curly braces with the if statement. Right? Same thing. Now, if you had to do more operations, inside of the routing part, you couldn't do this because this would not make sense. But because we're only doing one operation, which is accessing the controller, and the controller's doing all the heavy lifting for us, then yeah, this is like pointing to a controller, like a callback function, right? Hey, this is the listener. The listener is the list. I'm listening for the list request, and then here's the handler, which is the controller, right? So almost like an event listener, which is kind of what Node is doing, right? And listener, here's a response. And the middle part is the security, passport authenticate, because these parts, these routes are secure. Let's test this locally. So again, I'm just going to save. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to just add another thing, testing it locally. I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m. We'll say added, I'll say restored JWT security, right? Git push, right? And now that I've done our JWT security stuff, let's test it locally while using a nodemon. So nodemon is going to connect to my MongoDB database. Let's see if I can list stuff. So back up here, I'm just going to get rid of some of these gists. And at the top here, I'm just going to do my command, right? So it's going to be localhost 3000. If I did that, I'm going to get cannot get. This is good. And if I did an API list, we should get unauthorized, right? There's our unauthorized. This is good. This means that our JWT security has been enabled, right? And we can't see anything. And if we look at, if it failed, if somehow my little fat arrow functions weren't working, we wouldn't even come to this. It would just crash out, right? And you can see what's happening here. It says 401. 401 is unauthorized. That's what 401 means, okay? This is great. Now that I know it works locally, I'm going to push this to the render, okay? So remember how we did this with render. I'm just going to stop all this craziness, Control C, right? And I'm just going to drop out of Visual Studio Code. Actually, I won't. I'm going to do my copy paste, then I'll come back into Visual Studio Code. So here is ICE9B. I'm just going to pull up another Finder window, right? So I'm going to pull up another Finder window. Here it is. And my other Finder window is also going to point to the desktop. But this time what I want to do is I want to use the MDEV live site. And in the live site itself, you can see that there's a bunch of stuff, right? I'm going to get rid of all of it. So all of this, I'm going to get rid of. So I'm just going to move to trash, right? So delete. Let's try that again. Delete. Move to trash. There we go. And once I've moved to trash, what I want to do is I want to go into ICE9B, where I have all this funky stuff, copy it all, go back over here, and paste it in, right? Now, there's some issues. I have my node modules. I don't need them, so I'm going to delete them in a second. Okay, so I'm going to delete node modules, and I also have to update my package.json to remove my yarn engine, because yarn engine and render had a problem, remember? Yeah. So I got to do those two changes.
Yeah, when we do this change, it's
Yeah.
obviously going to break the stuff that we submitted for our ICE 8. So we're going to assume that it was working for ICE 8. And
No, I've got the video,
You've got the video.
right? If you didn't make the video, it's not going to work,
Right.
and then you're going to get 0, right? So that's why I need the video, right?
Yep.
Okay, so, but yes, you're absolutely correct. Okay, so there's the first part. The first part is this, and then now what I need to do is pull this into Visual Studio Code. because we need to make some changes to the live site. Here it is. So I'm giving you the way I would do it. I have my staging area. That's my staging site. And then when I test it locally, I only did one test, but I know if I can make it work, I mean, if we didn't do many changes, that's the only thing we did. It's probably going to work remotely. And I'm changing everything just to make sure I'm good. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of node modules because I don't need them, because I don't need to push that up. So I can just move that to trash. So node modules, bye-bye. And the other thing I need to change is my package.json. I need to change this so that it doesn't have yarn. Because that's the one change I made when I put it up to render. Render doesn't like my yarn version, right? So I just take it away. And I let it figure out itself. So now I can control backtick, make sure that you save everything, and I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say restored JWT, because this is on the server side now. Now we're actually going to push the server on render, and when I do that, I can go git push, and this is going to push it to render. And now let's watch render, how it restores everything. So back to render. So I'm going to go to render.com. I'm going to go into my dashboard. We should see that in my dashboard I have a deploying in progress. Here's my deploy in progress. I'm going to go into my deploy area where I can watch my deployment. So notice all the steps. First, we test without security. Make sure that I can do everything. Now I'm testing with security. And if there's a problem, right, we have to try and work it between the API and our front end. Now there shouldn't be a problem because I tested this out extensively yesterday, back and forth. By the way, like I said, if it's taking me an hour and 20 minutes to talk about this stuff, right, with no problems, right? Someone came along and asked me the question, again, through a DM, they said, I can't make Android work. It took me too long. It took them too long. I worked for hours and I couldn't make it work. Well, guess what? I worked for hours to make this work, right? With ChatGPT's help, right? If I had a problem, I would put in the error to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT would come back with a solution, potentially, right? Sometimes it was wrong, which means you need to know something, right? That's what it means. It means like you guys are still developers just because you have ChatGPT right now. Okay, good. So it looks like it's working, connected to Mongo, and it should give me an error. And this is the test. If I go up on render, and if I do API list, it shouldn't work. If I go here and I go API /list, it's going to give me unauthorized. I want to see this unauthorized. Wonderful. And you can use, if you want to go crazy, you can use Postman to test it and all that kind of stuff. But here's the main test. Here's the main test. We can get rid of this now. I'll keep this up so we can see what's happening here, okay? You can see the API list was a 401. So this is on render, okay? Here's the beautiful part. Ready? Xcode. Let's run it. Now we can test to see if our auth bearer token and all that stuff is working. So I'm going to go back in here and go on admin. We know this part works, right? Or we did before anyway. And if it works, we're going to get a login. And because I got this list, my token worked immediately. I know that. You know why? I wouldn't have got the list because it's unauthorized. And now I'm authorized. Make sense? So now I can do everything. And again, I would take it further, guys. Please do the test. Show me the test. I've added back JWT. Let's make an edit. Okay, so let's do Back to the Future 2. Right again. Update. And you can see now Back to the Future 2 came in. You can even show me on render. Go to that step. Look, here's render. Take a look at that. It's doing the list. And then look, it did an update. Right? This is all good. This is all beautiful, guys. This is showing you that you're getting a response exactly how you expect from the server. Don't take it further. I mean, you've already showed me everything like a full CRUD locally without JWT. Now you're showing me with JWT. You do an update. If you do an update, you can do a delete. You can do an ad, most likely, okay? And that is this. Now, here's something that we may have to do. You may need to, and I'm not going to do that here today, you may need to disable render a JWT again, okay, when you do your Android testing. Because you want to make sure you can access the data first with Android and then check to see if JWT security works, okay? Because otherwise what's going to happen is there's just too many unknowns. You remember, you want to, when it comes to testing and debugging, my friends, right, what I want you to think about is trouble isolation. Trouble isolation. Back at Bell Canada when I used to work there, I learned this thing in a number of different ways. The technicians that were out there, on site, Bell Canada is a communication provider, they had literally a wire line that went from the central office to a pedestal next to your home, okay? And then from your home, there was a little wire from the pedestal right to your house. And from your house, there was the demarcation point, which is a box on your wall from your house that goes a wire that goes inside to your phone somewhere, right? And there's different parts. All of those pieces are points of failure. Now that's from the central office. Now there's also parts between central offices. So I have one central office and another central office. That's another wire. Then there's another central office and another central office. That's another wire, right? And so you can see there's a lot of little places, hops, that you can make where there's issues in the line, right? What you want to do when you do any kind of debugging, and I'm sharing this with you as my experience is, you want to isolate between which 2 points is the problem. That's what you're doing. Is it between this point and this point? Is it between this point and this point? Where is it, right? That's what we do when we do debugging. So if I was to actually leave JWT security on, we don't know where it is. It could be anywhere. It could be JWT. It could be the fact that my Android code was wrong. It could be a lot of stuff that's wrong, right? Narrow it down. Start small, chunking. Don't try and do the entire app at once, even though ChatGPT will give it to you, right? Turn off, the stuff to test. If it doesn't work, turn it off and then start doing some printing. Start doing some print tests. Start doing some breakpoints. Figure out what's happening. Look at the code, the data that you're getting back. And now you're going to say, it's a lot of work. Guys, it's 4% of your final grade. This thing is like a little mini assignment every week, what you're doing. A little mini assignment that you're handing in. That's what this thing is, okay? It is not a small amount. This is not 1% or 0.5% of your final grade. This is 4%. Take it seriously, right? If it needs 2 hours, it needs 2 hours. Take whatever time you need, right? Okay. Questions around this whole process? So this is the culmination of everything we did from the very beginning, the very first day of class. That's what this thing is, right? This took us to week 11, right? What are we doing next week and what are we doing the week later? Because we need to talk about this, all right? So a couple things that were happening. If you look at our schedule, right, the next couple weeks are a couple of additional things we need to talk about. Payment gateways. How do I use Stripe and PayPal, right, and those kind of things. We're going to do a couple things, Apple Pay and Google Pay. How do I do those things? We'll look at them. There are a couple of in-class exercises that are planned, ICE 10 and ICE 11. They may not use the same set of, things that we have. Like, for example, our applications may change. We may do something just on the website side, the API side. There might be different things here. There's a lot to do in 2 weeks, okay? So I'm just letting you know, starting next week, we're doing stuff, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Now, how is this going to affect your final test? Here's something, let's do a logic test for you guys, right? Do you think that I'm going to put Stripe, PayPal, Apple Pay, and Google Pay all on your final test? No. Guess what I'm going to put on your final test? Full CRUD with JWT and another data set. That's what it's going to be, all right? I mean, it's not that difficult, right? So don't worry about it. It's important for us to talk about Stripe and PayPal and Apple Pay and Google Pay because this is what you're going to be doing with your APIs, accessing other APIs, okay, as well. But realistically, those two pieces could have been put on another course, okay? I'm not sure if they really belong here too much, in my opinion, right? So we'll talk about them The in-class exercises might be a little bit easier over the next couple weeks, which are going to give you some room to do your assignment 4. Okay? What is assignment 4? We just did it. We just did assignment 4, but now you just add in your own movies in there, and you might do slight changes too, because it has a poster link. All right? Really, that's all it is. Guys, this is not rocket science, right? And it's not that difficult. Don't panic is what I'm saying. All right? So I'm going to post the details for assignment 4 next week. You'll have plenty of time to do it because you already kind of did everything you need for assignment 4, right, with slight differences. And it gives you another chance to look at the exact same process, right, with slower speed, with you and a partner. Assignment 4 is only worth 7.5% of your grade. You and your partner, there's 2 of you, which means you should be able to work it out, okay, if you can't work it out between from now until then. So ICE 10 and 11 are kind of like those 2. Remember I said best 10 out of 12? Some people may elect over the next couple weeks not to submit ICE 10 and 11. And if you did all the other ICEs and you did very well on them, it's perfectly fine. You'll get 100% on your ICEs, and there'll be no issues, okay? However, I think it's good practice. This is your course. You paid for it. Do it. It's not going to hurt you. You know, that's what I'm saying. But these are the ones that I anticipated people weren't going to do, okay? Just because, you know, it's not really relevant to your test, it's not relevant to your assignment, but it is an exercise we're going to do together sometime next week.
If you did submit all ICEs, do you get a bonus?
I may give you a bonus. You won't need it, okay? Right? But, you know, yeah, I might give you a bonus. Yeah. But, you know, we'll see how it goes. Because then I want to see those people who do everything, and if you do everything fine, if you do all your homework, this is homework for you. This is like us, you know, doing math. That's all this is, math homework, right? Because all it is coding over and over again, all right? You good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, on that, to finish off this thing, to let you guys off a little early today, right? Let's talk about ChatGPT, just a little bit. I know I can make another video for this. I am not going to make another video. Let's just keep going, okay? So, so back to our code. Back to our stuff that we have to do. So how, you know, I got a couple people here in the class with me today, which is good. How would I do it, guys? What would I do if I was going to do a whole project with ChatGPT, right? What would I do first? Because I know people are confused when I say that, you know, getting everything done and all that stuff. How would I do it? Well, I don't know. I might do something like this. Hey, ChatGPT. Now, again, I pay for ChatGPT, so I have access to ChatGPT 4, right? But you don't need it. You can even use the regular one. ChatGPT 3.5, you know, whatever is fine. I pay for it because I don't want delays, right? I want my stuff to be prioritized. That's why I pay for it. It's $20 a month, all right? I use it every day now. Before, I never used it at all. When I use something every day, I pay for it. That's just me, okay? And besides, I want to support it because maybe they're going to add other features. Like one thing I'm really looking for from ChatGPT is this new thing that he's talked about, which is a instructions screen that you can do with ChatGPT. I think it's available in the US. I don't think it's available here. Here's settings in beta. And beta features is custom instructions. This is a new thing, all right, that they have for beta. And what you can turn on, I'm not going to do it here, but what custom instructions do is it allows you to basically say something like this. Do not give me, what should I call it, incomplete code samples. And it's going to span across every one of your chats, all right, as opposed to like you have to tell every single time, no, give me the entire code, all right? Plugins, right, which is third-party plugins, and also this other one, which is it knows how to write and execute Python code, right? This is the new thing that it does. Now, I'm not a Python person with you guys, but if I wanted to make a code, like actually do Python code with ChatGPT, it's right here in the beta features. Do you guys have access to that too? Yeah, so that's the advantage of having Pro, which allows you to do that stuff. But for the most part, guys, it's exactly the same, okay? So data controls, let's come take a look at that too, because that's something else that we have to look at. Data controls. So shared links, you can export your data chat history and training, you actually can turn it on and stuff like this. You can also delete your account. And then, of course, your general theme and all that stuff. So, yes, it's coming. It's in beta right now, but instructions will be something that everyone can do, and it's going to make it better. The other thing that they're going to do is they're probably going to allow us to upload files soon, right? So that means instead of us making it so we copy-paste, you upload your C# files or your Swift files or whatever, and then into that chat, and then basically it has all the context it needs so it doesn't forget. Because right now what happens is there's only so many tokens that it can take. Tokens meaning all these things we're giving it, and then it forgets,
I got
right?
into a loop with it. You understand?
Yes,
I
yes.
asked the question, and it gave me an answer. And then I asked another question, and then it referred back to the previous one.
Yeah.
But it couldn't get out of that loop.
It can't get out of it, yeah. So then you just have to kind of, so what I recommend is keep your questions small. Only do one change at a time, I think is the safest way to go, and you're gonna get good results. If you try and do too many things at once, right, well, then you're risking it, right? Then you're gonna get some weird stuff, hallucinations, right? That's gonna happen. So what do? I would probably copy paste in all the stuff that I have from Xcode, right? Now Xcode is okay, because you can copy these things in, however you do it, and I would start off with my movie Swift, right? So my thing, I'm doing the brand new project here, so I would start off with this, all right? So I'm going to start off with this, copy paste, and I'm going to talk about like this. So I'm going to, or I'll say, here is my Swift code. Here is my, yeah, it is. That's what I'm saying. My Swift code for, what was that?
Given.
Oh, here, okay.
Given this.
Sure.
This.
Here is my Swift code for for an iOS project that accesses an API. And then now I just kind of shift enter, right? And then this is the first part. All right? And I'm just gonna go back, and you don't have to break it down into different folders. I'm gonna go one after the other, grab everything, or one after the other, right? And just copy it in. It can take it. Typically, it can take it, right? Just have to be careful. And if you mess up, start a new edit. Start a new chat. Okay? Because sometimes it's just easier to start a new chat than not. Right? So go in there. It's going to take some time. Right? One at a time. It's not that long, right? Just have to be patient.
The other thing it has to do is update its thing past 2021.
It's going to do it eventually, probably at the end of the year. Although there's been a lot of outcry. I don't need anything else, I think. Oh, main storyboard. So for the main storyboard, I know you might think I'm crazy. I would use Visual Studio Code for it, right? Because the main storyboard gives the way the output is, and it can actually understand what it is, I find, right? So in the main storyboard, you can go to your, let's go to my ices, and I'm going to go to ice 9 here, and then, drag ice 9. That was here at Georgian, man. That was not. Yeah, that was here at Georgian. Georgian has like these really weird issues. All right, so so then once I have that, I'm just going to collapse all these. All I care about is, in here on the base project, in here, main storyboard. That's all I care about. So I'm just going to select all, copy it, and now go back to ChatGPT and paste it in. So now I've got everything, right? And now at the bottom under this, please, I want to create a similar project in Android using Tellet, Retrofit, and Moshi.
Last time I cut and pasted, it automatically moved.
Of course.
That's what it defaulted to.
Yeah, it did. It retrofitted Moshi. I want to use a similar project of Moshi and with Kotlin. Okay, tell it what you want. Java, Kotlin, whatever. Press enter. Okay? It takes all that information in, right? And if it's too long, right, like this, because sometimes it can happen, what can you do? Right? Now sometimes regenerate response.
Get to know Siri at apple.com.
Sometimes regenerate response won't work like this because sometimes you get into this part. Sometimes you may need to do this in multiple parts, right? I'm showing you goods and bads about this, right? So you have all of this, right? And maybe the last part was the thing that did it, right? Because, you know, my XML document is pretty darn long, right? So what you can do is you go all the way to the top, right? And from here, where this is where we have before the XML document all the way up, just copy that again, right? You already have it. You can also use a, notepad if you really care to, right? Some kind of notepad if you want to copy it somewhere else first and then copy it in. Again, eventually, I think it will, we're just going to refresh. It's going to be fine. So that's why I did that.
Yeah, because you have to be more careful with the free version because you get a lot of timeouts.
Yeah.
Some days you can't even get on.
I want you to create an Android version with retrofit and Moshi using Kotlin. There we go. So that was the problem. As you can see, guys, it literally is a no-brainer, right? Now it says, note, in Android version, use Kotlin coroutines to perform network operations in a non-blocking way. Retrofit automatically handles JSON serialization, digitalization using Moshi. That's it. You have an implemented Android version of your iOS app. Okay? Now, that's what it says. Okay? Next, you're going to say, okay, I would also like you to modify the user interfaces to match the following main storyboard from the iOS application. Okay, so now this is what this does. Let's see if they can do it, or if it doesn't, if it can't. Okay, so back to Visual Studio Code. I already have this highlighted, so I'm going to just select all, copy, go back to this, and paste it in, and then press enter. That's the part it doesn't like. See, my storyboard is too large, right, for what it does, right? So that's a problem. And it doesn't matter if you're doing that or Pro. Example, here's the thing. So if I go to the top here, so let's regenerate, let's refresh, because that's not going to work, right? And if I go to this, you can see that I have my, everything I typed in before. For the most part, I got everything right, you know. The user interface takes a little bit of effort to put together, right? So up at the top, you can see that I'm using my default. That's what I've used. And notice after I made the request, I can't change. I can't change out of the default or whatever, right? What about if I made another chat? So if I made another chat here, and if I tried the default, from the default I went to this. It says currently has a cap of 50 messages every 3 hours. That's a new thing. By the way, guys, earlier this month, it was 25 messages per day with ChatGPT-4, right? Let's see if it has a better capacity. ChatGPT-4 has a higher token, and much more tokens it can take in at once, right? So let's see if I can put that in, and if it will take it, or is it going to error out again? So even ChatGPT-4 can't take it. It says there was a problem because this message submitted was too long. One day, it's not going to be too long. You'll be able to do this kind of stuff. But clearly this is an issue, all right? I'm going to feed it in a little bit at a time. Here's what I'm going to say. Here is a portion of an XML document that I'm going to give you. I'm going to start now, and I'm going to finish later. Okay? That's what I'm going to say to it. Let's go back to this one. I don't need a new chat. I'm just going to go to this one and do that. Right? So again, I'm going to refresh. Back to Android. I'm going to say, I'm going to give you portions of an XML document that represents the main.storyboard. Right? Here is the first part. Okay, so now back to VS Code. Right? Obviously, it didn't like it all. Maybe I can do one portion at a time. Like, for example, this part right here down to about here with this first controller and that first part. So I'm going to grab all this and grab this part. So copy it and paste it in. Enter. Let's see if it takes that. Okay? Takes that part. Understands it. Here is the second part. Here is part 2. So I went all the way down to here. Okay, I know this is tedious. Please bear with me. I know that you're watching me copy paste code, but I'm telling you what I would do. Right? People have asked, how do I do it? Here's the way I would do it. Here's part 2. Here's part 3.
Just offhand, because maybe I've lost track of it.
Yeah.
Why would it need to see the storyboard?
I want to make the exact same XML outline in Android. Because I'm lazy. That's why. All right?
I get it now.
You got it. Right? So that's what? Part 3? So now you confused me.
Sorry.
API. Here's part 3. API Code View Controller. All right?
So,
Here is part 4.
You think it's going to
Let's see.
put all the XML?
Let's see. Let's see. Right? I'm telling you, man. You know, he's got to be creative. Right? He's got to be creative. That's all you have to do. Let's see if it can handle it. Right? This is the big part. You can see there's a lot more in here, right? So it goes all the way down to about here, I think. Actually, it's the end. This is it. I don't know if I can handle all this. Look, it even gave back to me in a different way, right? And now I'm going to say this. Use these parts as the main.storyboard, or given, sorry, I'll do what you said. Given these parts, these XML parts as the main.storyboard, construct similar XML documents that would work with the Android application we built above. That, my friends, is why I did it. You know what this does? You know how much time this saves on Android?
Yeah, I see.
That's why I'm showing you this, right? And so one thing. And the other thing is that we have to test all this stuff out. Even though it gave it to us, and it's going to keep giving it to us, it doesn't mean by any means that any of this stuff is going to work, right, and whatever. And now it's giving us a large XML document, right? Now here's something. It didn't give us, did it give us everything? Look, here's the activity movies detail XML, right? Hold on, no. Here's this part. Let's take a look. That's one XML file, right? Here is the activity main XML. So movie details in main. Where's the login view controller? Right, so this is the edit text for writers and whatever, right? And this is the movie details. And what about the login and whatever? Okay. How about the login and register view controllers? They were also in the main.storyboard. Right? Let's see. I know. There it is. My friends, how could you go wrong? Right? Once I have these things and I have all this stuff in my view, I have everything I need here in one file, right? So for the people online, do you still need help? I just can't see it, right, at this point. I mean, literally now it's just testing. You have to put up Android, got to check it out, log in stuff, copy paste, see how it works, and go slow is what I'm saying, right? You can have all these things in there, but there's some stuff that it's going to have issues with. For example, it may ask you for things like, I'm making a ID called the register button, and, the text is confirmed password. It might say things like, well, you might want to do localization. It'll give you a lot of warnings. Like you may want to add string.xml stuff, right, or whatever. Yeah, you're going to make a perfect Android app like that, but it's not necessary. It'll still run, right, without it. Just complain. Complaining is not running. So again, what I would do is run Android Studio now. Here's Android Studio, right? I'm not going to go through the whole process, but let's just do it. So let's make a new app, a new application. Now, which one would you choose? Would I choose something that has basic views or, bottom navigation and views activity or something else? No, choose empty, which is what I would do, right? Because you're going to mangle it anyway, right? You're going to kill this thing, right? So might as well choose empty. Click next. All right, and then name it the same thing. So something like, MDEV, 1004 in the summer 2023, and then we'll call it, week, I don't know, we'll say ICE 9, sure, ICE 9, C, right? Just so that way it's not like, the A was like, the thing, B was your API, C is the Android application, okay? I mean, it's just that simple. Now this is for you to do, that's why I'm not going to do this whole part. But I'm going to start off with this. Now, package name is important, right? And this is where I'm a bit of a stickler with package names. I want you guys to use, if possible, Georgian College, because that's where we are. So instead of com.example, ca.Georgian College would be reasonable. Okay, it's not going to be that difficult. And remember what the package does is it creates folders, subfolders inside the application. Also, MDEV1004 blah 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 is okay. Some people put it all together. That's okay too. So if you really have a problem with this, you can always just take away these underscores. Okay? I don't really have a problem with it, so I leave the underscores in. All right? It just means that this big part here is going to be at the top of every one of your files. The save location. Okay? So put this in the same spot as you would normally put it. I'm not going to do that here because otherwise I'll give you the solution. All right? But put this in the same spot. Some people ask, what API should I use? Well, if you go to help me choose, right, it tells you the most common API, right? So 95.4%, it's recommending NuGet, right? API 24, that's not a bad one. Don't try and do API 33, okay? That's silly. And make sure you have any API that you're using, you have inside of your Android project, right? So if you're going to use something else, make sure that you have the SDK manager load in the API stuff, okay? Press OK and press Finish. What does the Android application give us? Okay, that's the most important parts. So here's my Android application. All right? Wait for it to regenerate. Sometimes people go crazy and they do stuff before it's done. Look, down here, Gradle's still building, guys. So make sure it waits until you get this. Now, I'll tell you, my Mac Studio, that's super fast. Because on my computer at home, my superpower computer, an i9, 10900K with 32 gigs of RAM and an RTX 3070, doesn't work as fast as that, right? It's like way slower. But what do you get with the project? You get a main activity, right? And this is the one part you're going to have to be careful about. You need to have the package up here. Okay, that's important. All right, that's an important part to have. And there's some other parts down here, like this function that's greeting, and it's written in Kotlin. Okay, because it's fun. Whenever I see fun, it's Kotlin. Okay, there's a UI theme, and under resources, this is where you're going to have all your XML stuff. All right. So for your thing, so you have resources, and I have my drawables in here. I have my MIP maps, right? This is the IC launcher and my values. Values are colors, strings, and themes, like I said. Okay. So then, where is my my stuff for the application? When do I inflate or deflate or all that stuff? How do I know what my application looks like? Where do I go? Well, if I look at design, it doesn't do anything here because this is not an XML document, right? So where would it be? Robert?
Under layers.
Right. So, it's pretty simple. So where is layouts? Because people who haven't done this thing. So is it here? Is it under here maybe? Is it under here? Like you're gonna find it somewhere because layouts got to be somewhere. So where is it?
Should be under res.
Right? Where?
Should be under res.
Under
Res.
res. Okay, so where? Where is it? Because people don't find layouts here. Well, here's IC launcher, right? And here's my IC launcher round for WebP. So where's my layouts? People went crazy. They don't know, right? So do I have to refresh maybe? Is there something wrong? Did I do something wrong with this thing? How do I run this thing, right?
It just didn't matter.
How come?
Because you selected empty.
There's got to be a layout for empty, right?
Change the M2023 project and you easily find out the layouts.
So if I go to project, right? This is the project. This is Java, right? This is project. Here it is. And up here, you can look at this entire application. Here's my libraries, right? And, here's my app. And then inside my source, right? So where is it? Here's my Android. Here's my main, right? Here's my resources, right? Where's layouts? Because people got into this problem. Okay, here's XML. Where is it? How come it does this sometimes? Hey, did I make a mistake? Well, you try it. Launch a project. What did it do for you? Did it do layouts for you right away? Did I make a mistake is what I'm asking.
Well, I usually select empty views activity, not empty activity. Which is different.
So-
put it in.
So empty views activity. All right, so let's go back. So I'm just like, look, people can, what are you going to do? Could I make a layouts folder?
Oh, sure you could.
Right? I can make a layouts folder, could I not?
Yeah.
All right. So, and if I put it inside of res, how do I do it? So here's a couple ways of doing it. So let's say if I go to, instead of project, I went to Android again. Let's go back to Android. And under resources, if I right click, right, could I just not do some kind of layout folder?
Yes,
So-
could be.
So let's take a look here. So, we got Kotlin classes, and there's a directory, and if I go to activity, right, you can see I've got some basic activities I can add in here, fragments, there's a folder, and, there's some folders we can add in, right? So there's a Java folder and a raw folder and a res folder. We know the res folder's in there. How about XML? Could it be something else? Oh, look at that, a layout file, okay? So we can definitely have a layout file come in here. And I want to put it in the layout folder, right? So it'd be the layout folder if I'm not wrong, correct? Let's add a new folder, new directory, right? And we'll call it layout. If I'm not wrong, it's just called layout. Layout or layouts? What's the, what, eh?
Layout.
Layout, I think so. Well, there you go. Okay. So how come it didn't work? Because I added my folder. How come, where is it? How come it's not showing? Right?
Yeah,
Well-
you have to add it as a new resource to that.
That's right. So let's go back to this. So how do I add a new resource directory? So go here, and I'm going to add in,
Go file new and then resource object. It should go north.
okay. So here's a resource bundle. That's not it.
No.
So where is it? Here's this Android resource directory right here. And if I did that, now this is different. All right. Now this is a, you know,
You select the resource type and
right. So let's do the resource type and let's do layout. Here we go. Right. So there's the directory name layout. Right now I can change it, but why? Right. Layout is what it should be. And main, la la la, and let's add that in. It says to where, country code, blah 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 blah. Do I need anything? So why is it stopping me from doing it? What do I need? Because layout,
oh,
what's the next part? I need to push something over on this side. Nothing to show, it says. My layout direction? Screen width? A locale? The size? I mean, look, here's my directory name, here's the resource type, a layout, and I need to put this in, right? So here's the other way to do it. What if, instead of adding in a layout directory, I want to put a layout file? Is there another way of doing that? So Android resource file. And then what type is it? It says, right? The resource type is layout, right? And the directory name is layout automatically. And the file name is activity main, right?
so put the directory automatically.
Right? And if I did that, it says error, incorrect directory, layout. So it doesn't exist, the layout directory, right? So what do I do? How do I do that? It says layout direction, blah, 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 blah. And then there is no layout directory because that's the resource type. The resource type is correct, but the directory is not really there. There is no layout directory because it doesn't exist. Right? So how do you fix it? I'm just doing it if you, there's a couple ways. One, you can start a whole new project and just do the layout directory and it'll do it for you. But what's a way to fix it for you guys to do that? You could chat GPT it. I don't have a layout directory, right? Here we go. Instead of putzing around, right? You can say something like, Android didn't give me what should we call it? A layout directory in the res directory. How do I add this? Okay. How do I add this thing? Okay, it tells you the instructions. Open your Android project. In the Project Explorer or Project View on the left-hand side, navigate to the res directory, right-click, and then go New Android Resource Directory. In the dialog box will appear to configure the new resource directory. In this thing, add resource type, select layout, source set, choose the appropriate source set for your app. Usually it will be main. Let's see. Let's see, maybe there's other things. Remember, this is going back to 2021, which means some of the things it's going to tell you is going to be wrong. Let's go back to the Android folder and try that again. So again, res, going to go new, going to go to the Android resource directory. We're going to call this directory layout, right? It says the source set is main, right? And then I can press OK. Now suddenly it allows me to do it. Let's see. Oh no, but then it goes, iUsers Thomas already exists.
So the directory already exists.
Layout already exists. I added it in, remember, by accident on the other side. So we're going to do, that's just my bad, I'm going to go onto the app side, the project side, and delete the layout folder.
Oh yeah, you did manually.
Yeah, I did it manually. That's my bad. See what happens? And we'll try that again. And we'll go back into, because you guys go into the end, go into the project. I'm listening to you. I was like, it's my fault. It's all my fault. Here we go. Let's try that again. Resource type, layout, main. Press OK. There's my layout. Yay! Now I want to add in my layout a new resource file. A layout resource file, which I'm going to call activity main. Right? Activity main, inside the layout, it's a linear layout type, press OK. Now we're cooking. All right? From nothing, I have something. Right? And by the way, it may not be activity main that it suggests. It suggests some other kind of cockamamie thing, right? So now, we understand what to do. Let's go back to ChatGPT now and start forming out that stuff. So way up on top of here. Now again, there's different philosophies about how to do this. And I always start with the layout first. That's just me, always, no matter what I'm doing. Because when I have a layout, then I can attach the layout to something else. So that's me. So now that I got this, it says, this is activity main XML. So this is the copy of the code. I'm going to go back to Android, and in activity main XML, I'm going to go into the code side, right? And I'm going to replace all this code with my code, right? And as long as there's no errors, right? As long as there's no errors. Now it said something here. It said Android widget toolbar, and it's got this issue. So what's the problem here? So we can go to this little mark here, and it says add dependency in the in Android. Right? Wait for Gradle, please. Gradle's doing its business. All right, and when Gradle's done, those marks should go away. Okay? Give it a chance. Hey, look at that. Okay, now there's still 19 errors, right? And we want to go in to see if there's any other problems. Like it shows 19 errors in here, but I don't see errors in here. That could just be nothing, right? Well, there's 19, it says. 19 problems, right? 19 errors and warnings, right?
Yeah, this is title text. It expects you to change it to strings.
Correct. So now I'm going to go into design and see what the design view looks like. Ta-da! It's not perfect.
It's not as nice as the iOS.
No, it's not perfect. Then could give you colors and all that stuff, but I mean, it's kind of done.
You get extra marks to make it look really good.
Of course.
Okay.
They make it look nice. It's okay.
Yeah, 'cause that's ugly.
It is ugly, but I mean, it's there.
Yeah, well, it's a good starting point if you don't want to have to type all that crap.
I don't want to, and but it's also missing movie ID.
Yeah, why it's good.
I don't know. Right, and these are things you have to look at, right? So you have to look at these things and go, okay, so well, I want to add a movie ID as well, right? Because I'm going to need it, right? So I'm going to go back to code.
Yeah, it's easy enough to just copy it.
Yeah. So here I got linear layout, and I've got
Text view, grab one.
right here's my title text view. Where's my movie ID text view?
Yeah.
Right. So let's grab all this and add it in. So
You better add those components.
what was that?
You have to add the one above and one below. Because it makes the dual set. One's the entry and one's the text.
Hold on. Look at me. Right. Just rushing. Because I want to do this with you guys, just cause. And we'll call this. This is the movie ID. Movie ID. And this will be the title text view. It'll be the movie. You have to change the ID. So movie ID text view. Movie ID edit text.
Change the text.
Change the text so it says movie ID. And then we'll save. And let's see how it messes things up. Huh? There it is. It's out of reach, right? So a couple things that we could do. We can move the buttons around, right? So we can see that there's a button in there. Oh, by the way, other things we haven't taught. This is for the Pixel. That's our target, right? And also notice that the Android version that we're targeting is 34, right? It says we want to automatically pick the best version. That's what we want, right? And the Google Pixel may not be the one we want to use because maybe we want to use something that is a different type. And therefore, you'd have to configure this ahead of time, whatever that phone is going to be, right? You want to pick something that is equivalent, right, to the iPhone 14 Pro Max to keep the same layout.
Or you could just set up
Manually.
the constraints properly.
Yeah, which is another thing to do. So, and I'm using linear layout. You can use the other layout type.
Or you can just add the scroll view like you already said.
Well, it's here. It's right here. Here's a scroll. Right. So the scroll view has already been added in. Look. Yeah, I didn't do it. It did it for me, right? Yeah. So, but I want to move this part so that it's appearing next to the button. Notice I can't really get it unless I push this down, right? And then it doesn't really do much, right, in terms of our layout. So how do I fix this problem? How do I move the button so that the update button is at least visible? Or could I make the short description smaller maybe? Just so that I can see all my buttons first in there, and then I want to move that button so it appears kind of over here. Is that possible? How do I do that? I can't do it like this. What do I need to do with the cancel button and the update button in Android? What do I do?
Put it in a horizontal.
HBox equivalent, right? So I want to select those two items, the cancel button and the update button, right? For those people who don't know Android. And how do I do it? Can I just embed in something else?
Just add the linear layout with the orientation of horizontal.
So a linear layout with a orientation of horizontal, right? There it is. That's not what I wanted. That's the whole linear layout that it changed. Undo. So what I can do is go, this is where the XML comes into play, right? By the way, I can go back to ChatGPT, feed it this XML and say, you missed this, and I needed this, and I need that kind of stuff or whatever, and this is what I need. I want to make this button blue. I want to make it look like iOS. I could keep going back and forth and play with this ChatGPT all day long, right? Look, this is the first part. Once I have this, right? I mean, come on, guys. It's not that difficult, right? So let's go back to code, right? And now let's see what I want to do. I want to have these two buttons, right? And I want to make them side by side. So what do? I'm going to be lazy again. So here's these two buttons. Copy, paste into ChatGPT.
You could have just dragged the controller.
No, I'm lazy. All right? I'm going to be lazy. Can you make these two buttons appear side by side? I want the cancel button to be yellow and the update button to be blue. Okay? I mean, really, guys, like if I can do this, and literally I'm just being the laziest programmer ever, right? Then you can do it too. All right? Look, it doesn't even know what I wanted, right? I'm just gonna grab these two little pieces right there, my friends. Copy it.
When I was in math class a long time ago, they would always teach you the hardest way first,
Yeah.
and then work their way to the easiest. This seems counterintuitive.
Is it the easier way first and get to the
Easiest way first,
Yeah, I
and then
know.
work your way back.
Now here's something. It has a linear layout, right? So I have to give it some context. So the buttons, I can just say something like this, just an FYI. The buttons are already in a linear layout. I forgot to say that.
Super pleased with sugar on top.
Can you please make any adjustments necessary? Make any adjustments necessary. Okay? Yeah, I know I'm saying please and
Yeah,
whatever,
please.
and you don't want to say please, but never know. One day, we might want to bow to our machine masters, and they may remember me, right? I was a nice guy, right?
Alright.
All right, it says, sure, if the button's already in a linear layout, you can simply modify the existing linear layout to achieve the desired layout. Here's how you can adjust the existing linear layout to play cancel and update buttons side by side. Well, it says match parent, wrap content, horizontal orientation, and then no, this is not going to work. No. So you say no. You know, as an example, I have
You should
other elements. I can actually give them the entire thing again.
just say sorry.
No,
No, okay.
no. I have other elements in here, right? Elements that I want to show vertically. So now it's going to say, okay, sure, we can make a change. And it says, I apologize for the confusion. If you have other elements that you want to show, right, in the same linear layout, you can wrap the cancel and update buttons instead of another linear layout with a vertical orientation, right? All right, so now here's some stuff, and here's the buttons, and then it's a linear layout in here, and this is horizontal, and now I got everything I need. So now I can check to see if I can really be lazy, how far I can go.
Now I know why you couldn't do this in a test.
Why not?
It takes too long.
Oh yeah, it takes a long time. But that's just me because I'm being really lazy, right? You don't have to be lazy. If you know a little bit of Android, you can get it done, right? So back to this, back to my Android Studio, right? And I'm literally going to just replace this stuff here with what it gave me, and let's see what happens. Right? Whoop. Okay. So it says, I don't know what text color is, right? It says suppress the tool, the errors, because I don't care about those things.
It's interesting though that I put the color markers
Yep. I don't care. And let's take a look and see what it looks like now. Okay, it's not exactly what I wanted. And, you know, the text here is, what you call it, not exactly what I want. No, no, no. I'm going to go back. Anyway, the point, you get the point, right? The point is, with a little bit more work, right, you can say, well, I want these two things, you know, centered, right? So how can I center these things, guys? Because now, you know, let's not go a little bit too crazy. Because it's in a linear layout, right? And it says match parents wrap content. What could I do here to make it, you know, I want to pull this button here aside to the right side. And I want to pull this button to the left side. Okay. Okay. I need white text for the blue button as it is too dark. In fact, make the blue button a light blue. A light blue. Actually, in fact, make the blue button match the bootstrap frameworks primary button, and the yellow button match the warning button color.
You forgot to tell it the center.
One thing at a time.
Okay, that's right.
One thing at a time. This is the thing. When you go too crazy, add too many things in there, it's just going to be confused, right? So here it is. Look, now I got those two things. Okay, now from here, I know I don't have to go back because I know this is wrong, right? So I'm going to say, okay, now make sure that the cancel button is on the left side and the update button appears on the right side of the, let's see what it does. Actually, let's just do that. And yep, wonderful, wonderful. I like it. And I'm just going to grab this whole thing again, me being lazy as I am, right? Because I'm a lazy programmer. Copy it, go back, go to my code view, and it's already complaining about my linear layouts and linear layout, right? Okay, suppress the errors. There we go, save. Nice.
That's not necessarily
Not really, but it's okay. I can accept it. It's acceptable. You know, if you gave me this, it'd be acceptable, right? There's a couple things that are missing, right? Like this is not for the right phone, right? And then I can ask it, which phone should I pick to match the iPhone 14 Pro Max? And I may not know about the 14 Pro Max, but you can ask for things like that, and then it'll suggest to you the proper phone, and so that we can match the sizes, right? So, my friends, you see what I'm doing. People are online. I don't think it's rocket science at this point. If you can do this, right, with layouts, because layouts actually are one of the trickiest parts of doing the Android app, right? Because you have to drag and drop, make sure it works properly, blah blah blah, and then connect the layout to your code and all that kind of stuff. But you can continue adding layout files in here, and then the other part that you'd want to start adding in is, of course, all the stuff inside of your app. We have our Kotlin file here. So there's my main activity. Here's my main activity file for the Kotlin file. Let's see what I need for this one. Let's just add one thing. I'm not going to do the entire stuff.
Do you not already have to submit an Android application?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But I'm saying you could, if you never did it before,
Great.
just saying, some people maybe never did it before. Just saying. There might be some people out there that have just put half of the in-class exercise. By the way, I'm doing that in-class exercise for those people who are watching. As an example, you get half, right? So if you just did what we did, you get 50%, right? And if you did what you did, if you don't do the Android app, you get 0 for that, right? So it means you only get, instead of 4, you get 2, right? And you might be like, okay, I'll take 2 marks, 2% instead of 4%. And I don't want to do the other Android part. I'm like, yeah, okay, probably. But remember, to pass this course, you need 60%. Just saying, right? Do what you want to do, right? But in future iterations of this course, just to let you know, and for future iterations of the other stuff I'm doing, when I do this kind of work, it'll be 1.5% for the stuff we do in class and 2.5% for the stuff you do by yourself, right? So it'll be super important for you to do it. So what do I do here next is the question, right? So again, we'll stop here. I'm not going to go and do the entire app because again, this is for you. But I'm just giving you hints about how I would handle it if I was going to try and make this app perfect, right? So again, if I was going to go up, I've got the layouts and all that stuff that we talked about, right? And I would skip up to where it had the code, right? Just going to zoom up here, and you can see that we've done several iterations where I fed it all the stuff. It didn't do things properly, by the way. Notice it missed the title. It didn't give me the title for the XML document, right? Like the title, which is like add edit, didn't give me that, right? It didn't do the proper layout, like in terms of everything I wanted, because it just tried to do from what it could read from the XML document from the iOS side. It's not perfect, right? However, it does. Look, what a starting point. Like it saved. You know how much that layout would have saved me? For me to go and put everything properly, name it all properly, put that stuff. Forget it. I can do it faster this way. In the long run, this will save me more time than doing it manually, right? Okay, keep going up. Let's just zoom up here. Let's see if I can just scroll up. Sorry, being remote is kind of funny this way. There it is. All right. So it says open the build.gradle and add this in. So this is definitely a starting point. Okay, all this part here. So what build Gradle do I open? There's a couple of them. Which one? Right, because this is something you have to think about as well. So if I go back to here, right, I'm just gonna close these off. Which build Gradle is it talking about? There's one for the app and there's one for the project. Right, so there's the project, this part, right? And there's the module, this part. So where do I put it? Because that's an import statements, right? So there's like implements, right? And here is this is also where it is. This is the Android application part. So it should be here. Where should it be? Here or here? Which one?
I put it in the module one.
Okay. So now let's switch back to that, and it says implementation. Okay. So I'm going to put it clearly somewhere down in here, right, into the implementation area. All right. Does it matter the order? So. No, you said it doesn't matter, right?
It shouldn't. It should.
Okay, save. Sync changes. What is it going to do? It's going to go out, it's going to grab my modules, and it's going to put them in, right? And now when I use retrofit and Moshi, it's going to understand what they are. Are we good? Next.
Well, you do have some.
What do you mean?
Your dependencies are a little old.
What do you mean? I don't care about those dependencies.
Okay.
Should I care? Should I care about these dependencies?
I always do. But it's like
Should I change it?
I do.
Do I need it?
I always keep.
Do I need it?
Oh, do you need? No. You do
Thank
not
you.
need to.
Moving on. I don't need it. Should I? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
All right. But I'm not going to here, and I don't have to, right? So let's continue. Now, activity main XML still has errors, but this error is just because it doesn't like all of these things. I can suppress all these errors later, okay? And or actually do the right thing and create values if I want to make this a real app, okay? So that's the one thing. So now Gradle is done. Awesome. This is great. Now let's go back to my Android app and go into my the Java part of my app itself, right? And here's my manifests and everything else. There's my Android manifest. Do I have to do anything with my Android manifest?
Yes.
Is there something I need to tell it that's different?
Yes.
What? Why do I have to do something in here, right?
Because you need special permissions to access the internet.
Right?
Mm.
And if you don't put it in, it won't work.
Right.
How did you figure it out?
You're genius. That's what it tells you.
Because it tells you, right? Once you start adding it in, it'll tell you that there's a problem, right? I'm not doing that right now. I'm gonna wait for it to tell me, right? So, okay, so here's my example app. Here's my example app. Here's this app. Oh, look, here's my main activity. And should I not put it in here? My main activity that Kotlin is this one. Let's go back to my main activity Kotlin. And let's go back now to ChatGPT and see what the next step is. So now it says, create a Kotlin data class for the, now what would we call this thing? Movie might be the name, movie.kt, right? And now the thing is, does Kotlin care what you call it? Kotlin, does it care about what it is? So let's do the movie.kt class. Look, it actually took everything and made it exactly how it's supposed to be. This is my data class right here, right? So I'll copy that code. I'm going to go back to Android. And then up here, I want to add in a new file, right? So here's a new Kotlin class file. Should I do it this way? Or is there a better way to do a data file? Well, it tells you I can add a data class right here, right? So that's the file, and this is the name, which will be the movie, right? Movie data class, right? So there's my movie data class, but I really don't care about this. I do need this part, right? That part that it didn't give us, right? So that part is good. So that's my data class, right? And we can keep going, okay? Keep going, keep going, keep going. Follow the instructions, and you're going to figure it out. Now it says something like configure Kotlin. It says in Kotlin, Android, blah, 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 right? It says all modules containing Kotlin files in my app, right? And it says Kotlin compiler and runtime version 1.9. Should I do this? I'm laughing because the answer is I don't need to, right? I don't really need to, but I'm doing it anyway because what it's going to do is going to add Kotlin as a dependency to the project because I'm going to be using Kotlin for my Android build and I don't want errors, and it's going to just add it in, right? Scan for deprecations. Sure. The whole project. Analyze. Nothing to report. Yay. Like I said, not really required. Let's do the next part. One more thing I want to add in. So I want to add a service.
The highlighted ones, which is
I know. All right, so I want to add a service. It's going to be a class. That's what the class is going to be called. And if we look at what it tells me to do, right, it says create an API interface. It says create a Kotlin interface, to do it. So this is the next part, the interface, right? And the interface itself is the movie API service. So really, it is an interface that I want, right? That is going to be put inside of its own class. So because it's an interface, I would call it, but it's called movie API service. I'm not going to change the name, but realistically, if I was going to do this, I would call it the iMovie service. That's what I would call it, right? So I would know that it's an interface. But here, don't worry about that. Let's copy the code. And curious, for an interface, I have an interface. Here it is, an interface, and I can just put in the movie API service, because that's what it tells me to do, movie API service, right? It is an interface, right? There it is. And I'm going to press enter here and make that movie API service. I need the top part, which is the most important part. And then I'm going to go back to this, copy the code, go back to here, paste it in. Step by step. Okay? Step by step. All right, it gives me some weird little marks here. It says, here's get, unresolved reference get. What am I missing? How come this is having a problem with my gets and my posts and everything else? How come it's doing that? All right, what do you think? Why is it giving me these issues? It's got errors, 11 errors.
It's part of get, or it's part of the retrofit, so you probably have to include the inputs there.
Okay, right? So, or what's the lazier way to do it? Hey, ChatGPT, I'm missing an import because I'm getting errors, from thing. Do I have to import, retrofit? It doesn't tell me that. It says set up retrofit, right? Create a retrofit instance and define the base URL for your API and your application class or an appropriate class, API manager.kotlin. Okay? Let's do it. So make a new class. API manager. Thought it was got. Is it a class though? I don't think it's a class. Doesn't matter. I'm gonna erase it anyway. All right, here's where we get some stuff. It says convert to Moshi factory, retrofit. What else does it say here? Moshi, it doesn't understand, right? So what do I do here? How do I install this thing? Well, actually, there's nothing to install, right? When you see that, it says press enter, and it should add in the requirements somehow, right? So show property types. What does it mean? Why is it having a problem? Let's undo those changes. So I messed up. So why is it? What do I do with this one? Well, you follow the instructions here in the little light bulb, and it says do an import. Okay. Click on this thing, right? And does it give me the option to import the Kotlin factory? So it says import. There we go. Now there's two options, right? And it says one of them is deprecated. So I'm going to use the one that I want to use, right? Same thing with retrofit. So what does it mean? It means I want to do an import, right? So that's what I want to do. So how do I do it? I mean, this one is the same thing, where I want to do the import. So what do I do here? How do I take care of this thing? Well, is there a quick way to do it? Hover over and import is the quick way to do it, right? Hover over and import. It's that simple. So now you get your imports. Okay, now, question. if I put these in for Moshi and Retrofit, if I put these same imports, is it going to help us with our movie API service? Because my API service doesn't understand these things, right? Well, maybe I can do the same thing. If I hover over, right, is there a way of importing? And it says, well, it says I could import this part for a response. Okay, how about for the body? I could import. How about for the path? Could import. And by the way, I could be super lazy and just go back to, to ChatGPT and say, can you give me all the imports as well? Right? Like, so if it's missing, you may want to go into ChatGPT and say that. Like, I need the imports for all the retrofit and Moshi stuff for this particular class that you gave me, right? How about for void? Now, this is something different. What's the problem here? Why am I getting problems with response void? Right? It says interesting import alias. It does that. So I did all these. This all worked, but not void. Why void? So hover over and see what the error is. It says no arguments expected for class response. Right? No arguments expected. So it means that I don't really need this, is what it might be saying. Right? I don't need to cast it as something, right? Because it just tells me that I'm basically, the colon basically says of type response, of type response, of type response. That's what it's telling me. So now we've got our class happening slowly, and you can see how I'm building it out. I'm going to stop there, guys, because if I keep going, I'm going to finish the entire app. Does that clarify stuff for you? Do you want me to keep going? Okay, all right. So I mean, I can. Okay, I'll do one more, and then we'll stop. I was going to end early, but oh well. I mean, this is not that difficult to do. All right, so now that I've got this one, make the API calls. In your activity or fragment, you can now make API calls using your movie API. Okay. And it says we're using coroutines here. So now where is this going to be, right? And it's giving me some code that's suspicious, right? And you see that this is incomplete, right? This is incomplete code. We've got our stuff, and then I'm going to say something, okay, you gave me examples to create a similar Android app. I want to convert the login view controller that I provided to an Android activity with login layout that you provided. So we got our things, and let's see what it's going to give me. This is where you may have to feed it back information. I find that sometimes what I need to do is give it back my login view controller, right? Now that it give me an example of what I want, it's going to say, hey, I need your login view controller again because I forgot, right, kind of thing. And it won't tell me it forgot. It's just I'm going to know that it forgot it, right? So here we go. What does it give me? Did it give me enough? So it says, here's the activity login XML. It says, I apologize for the confusion. Convert the provided login view controller XML to an Android activity with the login input layout. You can create a new XML layout file, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I know that. And yeah, here's the thing. We don't have that. Next, you need to create a login activity in your Android project that will use this layout. To do this, create a new Kotlin file. And then in the Kotlin, do this. Yeah, and I'll say something like, this is incomplete. This is incomplete as I want to connect to my API. Please convert the login view controller, the API login view controller that I provided. API login view controller that I provided with appropriate references to the movie API service as required. Didn't do it. Right? So what is it asking me to do? Actually, no, there it is. There it is. There it is. Check it. This is the next part. On login button clicked. Right? Check it. On create. API login activity. Right? So extends API this. Okay, so here's retrofit. It actually gave me all the imports. Okay, good. It says add your layout content similar to activity login.main. Give me the thing. Yeah, we login button controller. Now what did it do? On click. That's one thing we have to change for our. It's just telling you that you need the on click event for the login button. That's what it's telling you. Okay, so otherwise it won't work. And then here it's the API login activity on the on create, and then add your API code here, authentication here, but it's here, right? API login activity, API login activity, same thing. So really, I think we can almost copy paste this one now. So let's do it. So copy code, we'll call this API login activity.kt, right? And it's going to use the r.layout.activity.login API, which we don't have, right? So I'd have to go back and grab the XML first. That's why I do the XML first, because then the activity exists. Make sense? Okay. And then I would do the next one. I would do the main. I do whatever it was. So maybe this login activity, I would say that main, I want to make this into a fragment or something like that. Like there's lots of directions I could go. Or maybe that the API login activity would be my main activity, because that's the first activity, right, that I go into. So guys, I'm not going to go too much farther than this. It's really about your knowledge of Android at this point.
No, I'm stopping this thing. Rather do it my own way.
Right? Totally different way. You're going to do it your way. And probably you're going to be looking at me going like, I wouldn't do it that way. I would do it like this. I'd probably set it up. And, yeah. But I'm saying for those people who don't know what to do, like it's not that difficult, right? And you can use ChatGPT, for, you have to go back and forth sometimes, like I just did, right? It's not a matter of a copy paste operation. I kind of said it last time. I know people got like, well, he said it was a copy paste operation. Yes, many copies and pastes and back and forth with ChatGPT. It's not free. You're getting 2% from this, right?
If you're just copying and
So-
pasting, you're not really knowing what
Yeah.
to do. You're just duplicating.
Exactly. You don't know what to do. Anyways, that's it for me, guys. Good luck. Hopefully that gave you more direction onto what you need to do. If you didn't know what to do now, I think you have more of an idea of how you would approach it, which means you have some work to do. There's some work to do for this stuff. Okay, guys? That's it for me, guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week. We'll have the details for your assignment 4 next week. All right? Thank you so much.